Hey, welcome to Tetragrammatics. I wanted to do a quick couch video today and cover something that's trending right now, which is a letter by an individual with the initials of OB and L, who at one time may or may not have been the leader of Afghanistan. A letter he wrote in 2002 is currently trending on TikTok by people who are finding some of the points he had made sympathetic, shall we say. It's currently being clamped down by the powers that be and our overlords, and so I'm going to be a bit more coy than I generally should be, but I think you know who I'm talking about. I just want to cover a couple points in the letter that are relevant to us and to the discussion we're having. One of the reasons why this is trending right now is because OBL touches on the Israel-Palestine conflict, and he touches on it 20 years ago. So we can see that this topic is an important one. So without further ado, let me get into the letter. I just got a couple points that are highlighted. I'm not going to do the whole thing. If I get, even more than a couple views, this is only my second video, I'll probably, if you're enjoying it and give me a couple likes, I'll consider doing the full letter. Like I said, I am right now doing research for my next larger video, which is the indigenous people of Israel-Palestine. I'll get into that a little bit here though. So let's get into this letter. So essentially he's giving his reasoning and defense, helping people understand as to why he launched the attacks that he did. So he starts off the letter with a general benediction, a quote from the Quran, and then he goes into his reasoning. So let me read this out right now. I'm not going to read everything. I got a couple parts that are highlighted. And a quote: "Some American writers have published articles under the title, 'On What Basis Are We Fighting?' We form our reply based on two questions directed at the Americans. Question number one, why are we fighting and opposing you? Question number two, what are we calling you to do, and what do we want from you?" I kind of want to stick with the first question because I do want to keep this a bit more brief, but there's a lot here to go over. Question number one, why are we fighting and opposing you? So he gives a number of reasons actually, but the first reason that he gives, which is important, is of importance to us. So he says, because you attacked us and continue to attack us. So after he gives that answer, he gives actually a number of places where he perceives that they were attacked. But the first place he perceives to be attacked is, well, let me read it. Palestine. You attacked us in Palestine. Palestine, which has sunk under military occupation for more than 80 years. The British handed over Palestine with your help and your support to the Jews who have occupied it for more than 50 years. Years overflowing with oppression, tyranny, crimes, killing, expulsion, destruction, and devastation. So what's interesting and of importance is that one of the reasons for the attacks in 2001, the primary reason, the first reason that he actually gives, is over the issue of Palestine. So this should go to show you how important this issue is and how much in the forefront of many people in Muslim nations this actually is. In Islam, this is an important issue. And why is it so important? Why do people care so much about this? Well, one of the things we can glean from what OBL said is he perceives that the occupation did not begin with the Jews, but it actually began years before, when the British came in control of the land. And why is that important? Who controlled it before the British? Well, it wasn't controlled by Palestinians, right? It was actually controlled by the Ottoman Empire, who controlled it for, from what I understand, about 500 years. I am currently doing the research for that video, and we'll give exact dates in the upcoming video. But they lost control to the British in the early 1900s. So Osama bin Laden perceives occupation as occurring when somebody who is not a Muslim or an Arab who inhabits this land. The Ottomans, importantly, it's important to understand that they were not Arabs exactly. They're actually more Turkic, or they're considered part of the Turkic people, but they were Muslim. So Osama bin Laden considered that a relevant occupation, a legitimate occupation. But occupation by anybody who's not Muslim or Arab is illegitimate. And so this should give a bit of a background as to the ideology and the understanding by some people, not all, but by some people in the Islamic world, that is, anybody occupying this land who is not Muslim or Arab is an illegitimate occupier. And of course, this would include the Jews. So this is important because Hamas, if you ever read their constitution, seems to be of the same mind. Not that this land should be shared amongst different peoples, but that it should be occupied and should be owned by Muslims and Arabs alone. So let's get into a bit more of that. In point number 2, under "You attacked us in Palestine," he writes, "It brings us both laughter and tears to see that you have not yet tired of repeating your fabricated lies that the Jews have a historical right to Palestine as it was promised to them in the Torah." So it's a bit of a conflicting notion here, because he says fabricated lies while acknowledging that the Jews were promised the land of Palestine or the land of Israel in the Torah. And so what's important here is to actually understand the background of the Quran and what the Quran teaches, which is that the promises of Abraham belong to Arabs and not to Jews. In the story of Abraham, Abraham receives these promises from God. And one of the promises is that the land of Canaan, which is what we call today the land of Israel or the land of Palestine, the land of Canaan was going to belong to his progeny, to his offspring. Now the Jews claim that it's them, and the Arabs claim that it's them. So the Jews claim descendancy through Isaac, and the Arabs claim descendancy through another son of Abraham known as Ishmael. So right then and there, we have a really interesting claim by both of these ethnic groups that they have a right to this land. And so this is one of the reasons why this particular conflict is very, very hard to resolve, because both have a deep-seated religious perception that this land does in fact belong to them. So that's all I'm going to really say about that. I do want to make a quick point about something that he said that I just quoted. I haven't quoted it yet. He says, "The people of Palestine are pure Arabs and original Semites. It is the Muslims who are the inheritors of Moses and the inheritors of the real Torah that has not been changed." So he's calling the Quran the real Torah. And again, the teaching of the Quran is that the New Testament and the Old Testament has somehow been corrupted, and the Quran corrects the mistakes made by the New and the Old Testament. In the New Testament, it's the divinity of Jesus, essentially, that's wrong, and that gets corrected. And in the Old Testament, it's that the Jews are not actually the inheritors of the promises of Abraham, but it's actually the Muslims. Interesting. So that's the letter, and that's the letter as it's relevant to us and relevant to the things that are happening here. I just want to touch on this thing that he says: the people of Palestine are pure Arabs and original Semites. This is also interesting because a couple things interesting in terms of how he sees the world. He sees the world in terms of the Arabs and the Muslim nations and kind of everybody else. And to justify this notion, he sees the people of Palestine as, and I quote, pure Arabs and original Semites. But if you know anything about the land, and this is what my next video is going to be kind of covering, the land of Palestine never had a specific one unified group of people. Palestine has almost always, even when the Jews originally went in and occupied the land and took it from the Canaanites, has always been a multi-ethnic and fairly diverse region of the world. And one of the reasons is because of its geography. It lies at the crossroads of Africa, Asia, and Europe. And so it had a bunch of different type of people. It actually had one of the most diverse flora and fauna on the planet at the time as well, because of where it lay and because of the diversity of the ecosystems of the region. So with that said, I do want to talk about the indigenous people of Palestine in my upcoming video, who are and who aren't, who were the first people there, and who is truly the indigenous people of Palestine. That's the upcoming video that I'm currently working on now. I hope this illuminated things. If I get a couple views or a couple likes and you want to see it, maybe comment down below and I'll break down maybe the whole letter, because there's a lot there to break down. Anyways, thank you so much for joining me. I appreciate the time that you spent. God bless you and have a great day.